Life had become too hard. Her husband, Obed, had been restless for months. His eyes no longer carried the same joy he once had when they first married. Poverty had slowly dimmed his spirit. That night, after the children fell asleep, Obed sat beside his wife. He spoke softly but firmly. "Akua, I cannot continue like this. I must leave Oda and go to Accra. Maybe I can hustle there and bring something better for us." Tears welled in Akua's eyes. She held his rough hands tightly, shaking her head. "Obed, do not go. Life is hard, but together we can survive. I fear Accra will change you, and we will lose what we have." Obed sighed. "This is not just about us anymore. Look at Richard, only 7, and already he asks questions I cannot answer. Mary is just 4, and she cries at night from hunger. Akua, I cannot watch them suffer. If I stay, we all die slowly. If I go, maybe, just maybe, things will be better." Her heart ached, but what could she do? She looked at her husband, the man who once promised her the world, now broken by life's cruelty. After hours of pleading, she finally gave in. "If you must go, then go. But promise me you will not forget us." "I will never forget you," Obed swore, his voice low but heavy. "Everything I do will be for you and the children." The next morning, Richard cried when his father picked up his small bag. "Papa, don't go. Who will walk me to school?" Obed knelt and kissed his son's forehead. "I will send money, Richard. I will come back stronger. Be a good boy and take care of your sister." Little Mary clung to his leg, her small voice trembling. "Papa, don't leave me." Obed's throat tightened. He hugged both children, then turned to Akua. Her eyes were red with tears, but she forced a smile. "Go, my husband. We will wait for you." With a heavy heart, Obed boarded a bus bound for Accra. As the bus drove off, Akua stood at the roadside with the children, waving until he disappeared. Her chest tightened with an emptiness she had never felt before. She whispered under her breath, "God, protect him. Do not let the city swallow him." That night, when the house fell silent, Akua lay awake on the mat, staring at the roof. She remembered his promise. "I will never forget you." She prayed it was true, but life in Accra had its own plans. Obed arrived in Accra with nothing but his small bag, a few cedis, and a heart filled with determination. The city's chaos swallowed him instantly, hawkers shouting, trotro mates screaming for passengers, and the endless noise of traffic. Accra was alive in a way Oda never was, but it was also merciless. For days, Obed walked under the scorching sun, searching for work. Many doors closed on him. "No vacancy," they told him. "Come tomorrow," others said. But tomorrow never came. He slept on bare floors of uncompleted buildings, his stomach often empty. At night, when he couldn't sleep, he thought of Akua and the children. Their faces gave him strength. One morning, while wandering near a lorry park, he saw a washing bay. Cars lined up, and young men scrubbed tires, soapy water splashing everywhere. He begged the owner for work. The man looked at him up and down, then shrugged. "Can you wash a car well?" Obed nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. Give me a chance." That very day he started. The work was hard. From morning till evening, his hands stayed soaked, his clothes drenched in soap and sweat. His back ached, his palms cracked, but he endured. At night he took another job as a security guard for a private company. He wore a uniform 2 sizes too big, standing in the cold until dawn, his eyes fighting sleep. Some weeks later, Obed finally sent money to Oda. Akua cried when she received it. It wasn't much, but it fed the children and kept the hope alive. "At least he remembers us," she whispered, kissing the notes before hiding them in a calabash. In Accra, Obed pushed himself harder. One day, while washing cars, a woman drove in. Her vehicle was big, shining, unlike anything Obed had ever touched. She was beautiful, dressed in rich fabrics, her perfume filling the air. She watched Obed carefully as he scrubbed every corner of her car with patience. When he finished, she smiled slightly. "Young man, you are thorough. I like that. What is your name?" "Obed, madam," he replied, bowing his head respectfully. "Obed," she repeated as though testing the name. "Good. Next time, make sure you are the one who washes my car." From that day, whenever she came, she insisted on Obed. She was different from the others, kind but firm, rich yet simple in her words. She would sometimes ask him questions. "Where are you from? Do you live here alone?" Obed, afraid she might look down on him if she knew his true life, lied. "I am single, madam," he said one day, forcing a smile. Her eyes softened, though she said nothing. But from that moment, something began to grow between them, something Obed had not expected. He told himself it was just friendship, but deep down, he knew he was opening a door that might never close. Weeks turned into months, and the woman kept coming back to the washing bay. Her name was Madame Ephua, a wealthy businesswoman who owned shops in Accra. Every time she arrived, her car doors would swing open to the sound of expensive jewelry clinking on her wrists, her scent filling the whole yard. The other workers would whisper among themselves, "Hey, that woman again! Why does she always call Obed?" One murmured. Another laughed. "Because Obed washes her car as if it were his own child. Look at how she smiles at him." Obed pretended not to hear. Inside, he battled guilt. Every night after finishing work, he would sit quietly in his small rented kiosk, thinking of Akua and the children. He remembered Mary's tiny hands and Richard's eager questions. He remembered Akua's tearful eyes the day he left Oda. Yet, every morning when Madame Ephua returned, he swallowed those thoughts and let himself be carried by her presence. One afternoon, while he wiped her windscreen, she asked suddenly, "Obed, are you truly single? A man like you must have someone waiting at home." His hands froze for a second, but he quickly forced a laugh. "No, madam. I have no wife, no children. It is just me." She looked into his eyes for a long moment, then nodded. "I see." Those words cut Obed like a knife. He wanted to confess, but the thought of losing her attention, and perhaps her wealth, tied his tongue. In that instant, he chose deception over truth. Days later, she asked him to accompany her to one of her shops. Obed hesitated, but curiosity pushed him. She bought him food, something far better than the gari soakings he ate most nights. She even gave him new clothes. "You work too hard," she said. "You deserve better." Her kindness touched him, but it also pulled him deeper into a trap of lies. He began spending more time with her, enjoying the comfort she provided. Slowly, letters to Akua became fewer. The little money he used to send grew smaller, and excuses filled the gaps. Back in Oda, Akua noticed the change. She sat under the mango tree one evening, holding the children close. Richard asked, "Ma, why hasn't Papa called? Did something happen?" Akua forced a smile, though her heart ached. "He is working hard, my son. He will call soon, don't worry." But late at night, when the children slept, she whispered to herself, "Obed, where are you? Don't forget us." In Accra, Obed's double life thickened. By day, he was the humble washerman. By night, he was Madame Ephua's companion, dining in places he never dreamed of. Yet, in the silence of his heart, guilt pounded like a drum. He knew the truth could destroy everything, but the lie had already grown too strong to uproot. Life in Accra grew heavier for Obed, not because of poverty anymore, but because of the choices he was making. Madame Ephua had drawn him into her world. Restaurants where food was served on shining plates, shops filled with clothes he had never touched before, and conversations that made him feel important. Each time he was with her, he forgot the tiny kiosk where he slept, and worse, he forgot the faces of Akua, Richard, and Mary. Slowly, his calls to Oda became shorter. At first, he would talk to Akua for long minutes, asking about the children, laughing at Richard's little jokes, and promising to send money soon. But now, when Akua's voice came through the line, he felt restless. "Obed," she said one evening, her tone heavy with longing, "it has been weeks. The children miss you. Even Mary cries at night, asking when Papa will come home." Obed rubbed his forehead, avoiding Madame Ephua's curious gaze across the table in the restaurant. "Akua, life here is very hard. Sometimes I work all night without rest. I'm trying. Please understand." Akua was silent for a moment. Then she whispered, "Just don't forget us. That is all I ask." But her words only deepened the guilt in his chest. He ended the call quickly, telling her his battery was low, though his phone was fully charged. The distance grew. Letters became rare. Money came less often. Akua noticed the change, but she told herself it was the hardship of the city. She prayed every night for her husband, asking God to strengthen him. Then one day, Obed made a decision that would change everything. He called Akua with a voice heavier than usual. "Akua," he began, "I have found an opportunity. There is a job in Nigeria. They say the pay is good, better than anything here in Accra. If I can get it, our lives will change. Richard and Mary will never go hungry again." Her heart skipped a beat. "Nigeria?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Obed, why so far? Accra is already hard for you. How much more another country? Please don't go. What if something happens to you?" But Obed was firm. "My love, this is for us. I cannot keep suffering like this. I need to try. If it works, we will have enough. If I stay here, what future do we have? Trust me, I will go, and I will return with blessings." Akua wept silently on the other side of the line. "If you believe this is the way, then go. But remember us, Obed. Don't let the city or the world take you away from me." He closed his eyes tightly, fighting the shame burning inside him. If only she knew the truth. If only she knew that Nigeria was never part of his plan, but the excuse he needed to bury his old life. After that call, Akua sat on the mat, her hands trembling. She looked at her children playing in the dust and whispered, "God, protect their father. Bring him back to us." But the heavens were silent. The day Obed left Accra, or so Akua believed, was heavy with sorrow. She watched Richard and Mary chase each other around the compound, their laughter piercing her heart like a knife. She forced a smile, though deep inside she was breaking. Obed had promised to travel to Nigeria for work, a job that would change their lives. She wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at her soul. For days she heard nothing. She told herself maybe the journey was long, maybe he was settling into the new place. She prayed every night, her tears soaking the pillow, begging God to guide her husband and bring him home safely. Then, 1 month later, her world shattered. It was a late afternoon when her phone rang. The number was strange. She almost ignored it, but something urged her to answer. "Hello, "Is this sweetheart?" a man's voice asked, shaky and filled with pity. "Yes, this is she," Akua replied, her heart already pounding. "My name is Ikechukwu. Please forgive me for disturbing you. I found this phone at the scene of a terrible accident in Nigeria. The car was burnt to ashes. No one survived. I saw a card in one of the scattered bags. The name on it was Obed Akoto. That is why I called." The phone slipped from Akua's hand and hit the ground. Her breath caught in her throat as her body went weak. Richard ran to her. "Ma, what is it? What happened?" She couldn't speak. She fell to the floor, clutching her chest, gasping as tears spilled uncontrollably. Your father, was all she managed before breaking down completely. Neighbors rushed in. The news spread quickly through the compound, and soon the small house was filled with wailing. Women held Akua as she screamed, pounding her fists against the ground. "God, why? Why did you take him from me? Why leave these children fatherless?" Richard stood frozen, his little fists clenched, tears rolling silently down his cheeks. Mary crawled into her mother's lap, not fully understanding, whispering, "Where is Papa? I want Papa." For days, Akua lived like a shadow. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Obed smile, heard his voice promising to return. She thought of the last call, how he had told her he was going for their future. Now, the future was ashes. People came to mourn, some whispering behind her back. "Accra swallowed him. Nigeria has finished him. Poor woman, left with 2 children." Akua didn't care what they said. Her heart had been torn apart. She wished she could wake from the nightmare, but it was real. Little did she know, far away in Accra, Obed was alive, breathing, eating, laughing beside Madame Ephua. His lie had worked. To his wife, he was dead. To his children, he was gone forever. And yet, he lived in comfort, choosing deception over love. The day Akua lit a small candle in his memory, whispering his name to the night, Obed was at a dinner table, raising a glass in celebration. The morning after the dreadful call, the man who phoned Akua sent pictures to confirm the tragedy. When she opened them, her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. The images were too painful to look at. Charred remains, twisted bodies burnt beyond recognition, metal scraps scattered like broken dreams. Her heart sank deeper. She zoomed into one of the photos, but there was no way of telling if one of the lifeless corpses was Obed. Still, the presence of his phone and the card with his name was enough. The village buzzed with sorrow. Everyone believed it. Obed was gone. Neighbors suggested they travel to Nigeria to bring his body back, but the pictures told the truth no one wanted to face. There was no body to return. Everything had turned to ashes. "We cannot go," Akua wept, her voice cracking. "Even if we go, what will we find? Nothing but burnt bones. My husband is gone, and I will never see his face again." The elders of Oda gathered. After deliberation, they agreed to hold a funeral in the village. "The man is dead. Whether or not his body lies here, his spirit must be put to rest," one of the old men said. And so preparations began. Black cloths hung at the compound. Women wailed, men gathered under the mango tree, talking in hushed tones about how cruel life was. Children from the neighborhood played quietly, sensing the weight of grief in the air. On the day of the funeral, Akua wore a simple black dress, her eyes swollen from nights without sleep. Richard clung to her hand, his little suit oversized, his lips trembling. Mary was carried on her auntie's back, her small face wet with tears, though she didn't fully understand why everyone was crying. The pastor spoke softly but firmly, his words cutting through the silence. Death is a thief. It takes without asking. Today we mourn our brother Obed Akoto, a man who left his family seeking a better life, but was taken too soon. We may not have his body, but we know his soul rests in the hands of God. Akua wailed as the drums beat slowly. She fell on her knees, crying, "Obed, you promised me you would never forget us. Why did you leave me this way? Why did you break your word?" Her cries pierced the crowd, and many women joined in, their voices rising in sorrow. At the end of the ceremony, they buried an empty coffin, symbolizing his body. People threw handfuls of sand, whispering his name. Richard stepped forward, trembling, and dropped a small stone inside. "Goodbye, Papa." His voice cracked, and the crowd's sobs grew louder. Mary only asked one question, her innocent voice echoing, "Will Papa come home after the funeral?" No one could answer. Back in Accra, Obed never knew of the funeral. That same weekend he wore a new shirt bought by Madame Ephua and laughed at a joke she made. He drank wine, never realizing his family in Oda was burying him alive in memory. Life after the funeral became a battlefield for Akua. Every morning she woke up to an empty side of the mat where Obed once slept. The silence of his absence was louder than any noise. She had to carry the weight of two parents, yet she was only one fragile woman. She started selling firewood, carrying heavy loads on her head until her neck ached. Some days she went to the market to help women sell tomatoes, earning just enough to buy porridge for Richard and Mary. When food was scarce, she lied to her children, saying she wasn't hungry, and gave them her portion. Richard, now 8, grew quiet. He no longer played as much with the other children. He saw his mother's tears when she thought no one was watching. He tried to be strong, fetching water, carrying wood, and protecting his little sister. Mary, barely 5, often asked about her father. "Ma, when will Papa come back from heaven?" she whispered one night as they lay under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. Akua bit her lip so hard it bled. She stroked her daughter's hair and said softly, "He is watching over us, my child. He sees you every day." The years passed slowly. Poverty pressed harder. Sometimes Akua considered sending the children to relatives, but her heart wouldn't let her. "I will suffer with them," she said to herself, "but I will not abandon them." People in the town began to treat her differently. Some men tried to take advantage of her widowhood. Others pitied her but offered no help. She learned to live with the whispers, the pitying looks, and the loneliness that crawled into her bed every night. Meanwhile, in Accra, Obed's life was nothing like the one his family endured. Madame Ephua had given him a better place to stay, bought him clothes, and even introduced him to some of her friends. He no longer washed cars. She'd pulled him out of that. He was now her companion, her confidant. But sometimes, when the night grew quiet, guilt haunted him. He would see the faces of Richard and Mary in his dreams, calling out to him, asking why he left. He would hear Akua's voice crying his name. He often drank to silence those ghosts. Back in Oda, Akua's health began to suffer. The stress of feeding 2 children alone wore her down. She grew thinner, her skin darker from the sun, her back bent from endless labor. But still, she fought. "Ma, when I grow up, I will take care of you," Richard promised one evening, his small hands clenched in determination. Akua forced a weak smile, tears rolling down her cheeks. "May God give you strength, my son." Little did she know, years were passing, and the man she buried in memory was still alive, walking the streets of Accra as though his past never existed. As the years rolled on, Oda felt heavier for Akua and her children. Poverty became their daily companion, while grief never loosened its grip. Richard grew into his teenage years with the burden of a man on his shoulders, often skipping school to work for neighbors so that Mary and their mother could eat. Mary, now in her early teens, had inherited her mother's resilience, but her laughter was faint compared to the carefree joy she once carried as a child. Meanwhile, in Accra, Obed's life had taken an entirely different turn. Madame Ephua, curious and caring, once asked him, "Obed, you've been with me all these years. I want to meet your family. Let me visit your hometown." His heart froze. Images of Akua, Richard and Mary flashed through his mind. Panic rose like fire in his chest. But Obed, determined to protect his web of lies, forced tears into his eyes. "Ephua," he said in a trembling voice, I lost my parents at a tender age. The relatives who raised me treated me so badly, I cut ties with them. I have no one left to call family." Ephua's heart softened. She touched his hand gently. "My dear, I'm so sorry. You've suffered in silence all this time. From now on, you have me. I will be your family." And she meant it. From that day forward, she poured her wealth into him. She took him abroad for the first time in his life, where Obed wore suits, dined in fine places, and pretended to forget the life he had abandoned in Oda. She made him manager of one of her warehouses, giving him authority and respect. People addressed him as Sir now, not the poor washerman who once scrubbed tires for coins. The lie had bought him everything, comfort, status, and love, but it had cost him his soul. A few years later, their bond solidified. Though Ephua's friends whispered about her choice of husband, she stood firm. She arranged a modest court wedding. There were no drums, no family elders, no children waiting to call him father. Just a handful of her friends, a judge, and Obed in a crisp suit that made him look like someone he had never truly been. "Do you, Obed Akoto, take Madame Ephua as your lawful wedded wife?" the judge asked. Obed swallowed hard, his heart pounding with guilt. But he looked at Ephua's trusting eyes and forced a smile. "Yes, I do." They exchanged rings, simple and elegant. Ephua beamed with joy, but deep inside, Obed felt a weight pressing on his chest. Somewhere far away, in Oda, his real wife still bore his name, raising his children in poverty and grief, never knowing that her husband, whom she had buried with tears, was alive and newly married. That night, while Obed danced modestly with Ephua in their small celebration, Akua sat in the dark, praying for strength to survive another day. Time did not heal Akua's wounds. It only deepened them. Years of hardship left their mark on her body. Her once full figure had grown thin, her face lined with stress, and her back curved from carrying endless burdens. Sickness began to creep in quietly. Some days she could barely rise from the mat, yet she forced herself to keep going for the sake of Richard and Mary. Richard, now a young man, carried the pain of his father's absence like a scar. He never forgot the day they buried the empty coffin. He remembered his mother's cries and the weight of responsibility that fell on him as the first son. Anger sometimes burned in him when he saw other boys laughing with their fathers, but he had learned to swallow it and focus on survival. After completing secondary school, Richard made a bold decision. He hugged his mother one morning and said, "Ma, I cannot watch you suffer like this anymore. Let me go to Accra and find work. Maybe I can help you and Mary." Akua's eyes filled with tears. The thought of her son walking the same road that swallowed Obed terrified her. "Richard, Accra is a hard place. It can change people, I don't want to lose you too." But Richard smiled faintly, though his heart was heavy. "You won't lose me, Ma. I am not Papa. I will not forget you." She held him tightly, whispering prayers into his ear, as if her words could shield him from the same fate. When Richard arrived in Accra, the city overwhelmed him, just as it once did Obed. The traffic, the noise, the endless rush of people, all of it pressed on him. But unlike his father, Richard's spirit was sharp, his resolve unshakable. After days of searching, he was fortunate enough to land a job as a waiter in a small but busy restaurant. The pay was little, but he worked tirelessly, carrying trays, cleaning tables and greeting customers with forced smiles. Each time he received his wages, he sent a portion home. Akua would hold the money to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "My son has become the man of the house," she whispered with pride and sorrow. But fate has a cruel way of twisting stories. Richard never knew that in the same city, not far from where he worked, his father was alive, dressed in fine clothes, managing a warehouse, living as the husband of another woman. Sometimes, as Richard walked home late at night, tired and hungry, he passed by luxurious restaurants where rich men dined with their families. He often stood outside for a moment, watching through the glass, wondering if life would ever give him such a chance. If only he knew one of those men he envied was his own father. Richard had now spent a year working at the restaurant. He had grown taller, his shoulders broad from long hours of carrying trays and lifting crates. Though the work was tiring, he remained humble and diligent, saving whatever little he could to send back home to his mother and sister in Oda. One evening, the restaurant buzzed with activity. Customers filled every table, laughter and chatter filling the air. Richard moved swiftly between tables, balancing plates of jollof, fried rice and drinks. His manager often praised him. "This boy is sharp. Customers like him." On the other side of Accra, Madame Ephua had finished a long day of work. She had returned late from one of her business meetings abroad and was too tired to cook. On her way home, she spotted a familiar restaurant and decided to stop for a quick meal. She parked her car, stepped out in her fine dress and jewelry, and walked inside. The moment she entered, her eyes scanned the room and froze. There, moving quickly between the tables with sweat on his brow, was a young man who looked shockingly familiar. His face, his eyes, even the way he frowned while concentrating. It was as though she was staring at a younger version of her husband, Obed. Her heart pounded. She whispered to herself, "No, it can't be." She blinked several times, but the resemblance was undeniable. Richard, unaware of her presence, walked past her table carrying a tray. She caught his voice when he politely greeted another customer. It was soft, respectful, but something in it pulled at her chest. She sat back, staring at him, memories flashing in her mind. She thought of the times she had asked Obed about his family and how he had cried, telling her they were cruel and he had cut ties. Could it be that he had lied? When Richard returned to her table to serve her order, she stared at him closely. He looked puzzled under her gaze. Finally, she said softly, "Young man, what is your name?" So many secrets are about to unfold. Madame Ephua has seen Richard, the boy who looks exactly like the man she calls her husband. Questions will rise, lies will be tested, and the truth that Obed buried in the ashes of Nigeria will begin to surface. Will Richard discover that the father he mourned for years is not dead, but living in the same city with another wife? Will Akua, who has suffered and sacrificed for her children, finally see the truth of her husband's betrayal? And what about Madame Ephua? What will she do when she learns that the man she loved and trusted built his new life on deception? The twists and turns ahead will test every heart. The final episode will reveal everything. What will happen to Obed when the truth finally catches him? What will become of Richard, the son who carried his mother's burdens with dignity? And what will happen to the entire family, including Mary and Madame Ephua, when lies collide with reality? The answers are coming, and the journey will be emotional, shocking, and unforgettable. Men who run away from their responsibilities should know this. You do not only abandon your wives and children, you abandon your own soul. You leave scars that never heal, and you build palaces on the tears of the innocent. But women, like Akua, who sacrifice their strength, their time, and their lives for their children in the absence of irresponsible husbands, deserve the highest blessing. May every tear they cry turn into joy, and may their children rise to honor them. So, dear viewers, keep watching. Follow us closely and don't miss the next unfolding chapter of this heartbreaking yet powerful story. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ananse Web of Tales, for more captivating stories like this. And before you go, please share with us in the comments where you are watching from, your city, your country, your community. Your voice matters, and your story inspires us to keep telling more. The story is not over. The final truth is yet to be revealed. Stay with us.